it was, or somewhere, that it was really crowded at a park. Was that you that had mentioned that?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We were over on the northern coast for part of a day and just stuck our heads in Cape Lookout. Partly there were people paragliding there, so we were trying to get a closer view of them floating around over Cape Lookout. But there was a lot of people there. The park was completely packed. It was being impressively used. We've been out in Central Oregon a little bit birding and hiking as well, and it's just amazing. I think earlier this week it was 20 degrees in the morning and nearly 70 by the mid to late afternoon. So it's really that time of year where spring is on the wing, so to speak.
We had a subcommittee meeting this morning and we got to listen to Mark's wife play banjo a little bit, which was nice. Morat, how are you?
I'm fine, and I'd also like to welcome Kelly. Glad to have you with us. I'm good. I've just been laying low for the last month after I had middle ear surgery to try to restore my hearing in my left ear, and it's been really interesting in that it's slowly the world is getting louder, and I'm starting to hear lawnmowers and dogs barking and all kinds of stuff. And yesterday I got to turn my left side hearing aid down by half. I mean, it was all of a sudden the world was too loud. So I think it worked, and I'm going to have the rest of the bandages and stuff taken out of my ear next week. So I'm really excited and grateful for modern medicine and the fact that I had a great young doctor with a steady hand that was willing to go inside my brain with a laser. And so, yay. And yeah, and Central Oregon is crazy right now. It's 20 and then it's 70 and it's pretty dry. And we just had a really bad windstorm and 2 wildfires with evacuations in Bend. So, you know, it's not shaping up to be great. We really could have used more moisture. As Carl said, we're kind of needing more rain and snow.
Yeah, we've had 2 wildfires already in Klamath. I mean, that's unheard of. That just doesn't happen. Davi, I know you've been busy. What's up?
Yes, well, busy with work tasks for sure. A lot of action for us on adopting the climate and ocean change policy here at the department. And kind of a very new thing for me, I am working on hiring someone to do our first ever carbon footprint assessment of the department's work. You know, we've always thought a lot about how climate change affects fish and wildlife. We're going to take some steps to look at how we affect climate change and our emissions. So that's an interesting new thing for me on the work front. And then personally, my sister's turning 30 in 2 weeks, I guess. And I haven't seen her since last year. And she is fully vaccinated and her partner is almost fully vaccinated. And they're going to go to San Francisco from New York. So my husband and I are going to drive down and meet them in San Francisco for her birthday. And we're going to take the long weekend and see the redwoods, which I have not done yet since I moved out here. So I'm really looking forward to that. A little vacation and seeing something new and incredible.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I hope y'all recognize Davia has what I thought was a full-time job running the OCRF, but she actually has a couple other full-time jobs doing a ton of stuff for Odfw. So we really are lucky that she is able to juggle all those things and make them happen. We're really fortunate to have her as our staff person. And the other one who's been busy is Mark Labhart. Mark has been wheeling and dealing and in the legislature, and just every time I look at some schedule, he's on it, no matter what the subject is, from sudden oak death to OCRF to everything else. He's been involved. So why don't you tell us what you've been up to, Mark?
Well, good morning, everybody. And Kelly, particularly good morning to you. I actually think we have met. I sit on the OWEB board too, and I think you've testified before the OWEB board, if I recall. So I'm not sure, but now I recall, I think we have met. I'm one of the 2 non-voting members on the OCRF, and I have the privilege of being an ODF&W commissioner. And so yeah, I've been pretty involved in trying to weave our way. Some of the big issues for me right now are the 2022 big game regs and trying to work through some of the issues that we have with reduced elk numbers and management objectives for deer, and trying to work with the archery community and trying to reach some kind of a compromise on the regulations for 2022. Been participating in a number of meetings involving those folks to try to see if we can reach some consensus before it gets to the commission. And then had a nice Zoom call yesterday with Chris and some other fishing representatives to talk about the Columbia River and what's going on there, and active in OCRF. And I thought, just for the fun of it, this is actually a picture out my living room window. So I didn't want you to see the dogs anymore, but this is the view I have every morning. I live in Sisters. And so Merritt and I wake up to this almost every day when it's not snowing or cloudy or fogged in. But I pinch myself all the time when I wake up and walk to the kitchen and look out that window or the living room window and see that every morning. So, end of report.
Well, Mark, all the great work you're doing, you certainly deserve to have that view of Oregon, because you've certainly done a lot for the state, and we really appreciate that. Again, I see your name everywhere, and people look to you for leadership. Jane, how are you doing?
I have to unmute first. I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. It's really beautiful here this morning. I'm thinking I should just get off this call and go outside and play, but okay, I won't. I'm going to start with a question. Hey, Mark Stern, we're taking bets here on when the Sandhill cranes are going to lift off. And I'm thinking you probably know, since you kept tabs on them for years. Is it going to be this week, or is it going to be next week or the week after?
Well, I'd say April 15th is a good date to think about. But the other thing that conflates it a little bit is, over the last decade, a few, and now even a few more, are hanging around in the summer. So if you keep your ears open, and it's infrequent, but they're on the island and at Ridgefield. There's, I don't know how many, but I bet a dozen pair or more that are summering there. So
wow,
you can
so
hedge your bets.
we had a group we called the Four that summered over, but yeah, but they've been really, really noisy the last few days, and there's something going on. I think they're having a lot of conversations about it. Like, is this the day? But a friend of mine told me that last year she managed to be out on the island on the day that the cranes decided to go, and she saw them circle higher and higher and higher into the air till they got to the thermals, and then poof, they were gone. And she said it was one of the most magical things she's ever seen. So we're watching right now. They're just talking a lot, so it's coming. But yeah, we have the changing of the guard. The ospreys, the Sandhill cranes go, the ospreys come, and so it's always fun watching the birds out here. On the frog front, I know, I think you know that I work with the Harborton Frog Shuttle, and it's been a really bad year for frogs. They just seem to not be getting any days at all when they have the right conditions to go at night, and we still have several hundred male frogs down in the wetland that just can't get out because they need a warm, wet night. And it seems like it rains all day, and then when it's time for the frogs to go, it dries up, or it's been warm all day and it's raining, but then the temperature drops, so that's not so good. And other than that, I'm just trying to keep up with the insatiable need for native plants, and have plants just flying out of here left and right at the nursery. So that's good to see.
What a great life, Jane. Sounds good on Savia Island.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. Well, we've welcomed Kelly, and I think she's gotten to hear from us, so we can move on with the rest of the meeting. We have minutes to approve. Davia, do you have a motion out there for someone to read?
Might want to introduce Michelle. She keeps everybody straight.
Oh, Michelle. Hello, Michelle. Why don't you introduce yourself to Kelly?
Good morning, Kelly. My name is Michelle Tate. I work for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I provide executive assistant support to the director's office and to the commission. and a lot of other little things that fall underneath that umbrella. And welcome, we're really excited to have you part of the board, and nice to see this group having a complete set now.
Actually, we're still short. We're still looking for someone in Northeast Oregon. I guess technically the Blue Mountain Range. We haven't gotten that person yet. Has everyone taken a look at the meeting minutes? Is there any problems with those? If not, can we get someone to move to approve them?
I move to approve.
We have a second? Someone
will-
needs, you got
I
to
will
read.
second.
So yeah, you got to read that for the record.
I move to approve the March 5th, 2021 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
And we do have a second. Who was the second?
I will second. This is Jane.
Okay, great. All in favor? Thumbs up. Great, we're good. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is kind of an update on our fundraising and recent grant approvals. Davia, can you run through that for us?
Sorry, my unmute button is not working while I am sharing my screen. Just weird. Anyway, I'll just read this to you. We, as of yesterday afternoon, have $394,629 raised. So we're knocking on the door of 400,000. And of that 394,000, we have obligated, restricted, or spent 356,593, which leaves just under 40,000 available for the next set of projects on the contingent list. So I have not gone down the list since the last meeting. So if you'll recall, at the last meeting, we talked about going to 5 more projects beyond Verde on the list. So if you have the list handy, that takes it through the Klamath Basin fish project. And that would leave the next project. Oh, I just accidentally closed my list. The next project available, I will let you know what that is in a minute. But the reason, so we've got these $40,000 unobligated as of right now. The reason I haven't gone to the next projects on the list is that our amount raised includes the $25,000 from the Oregon Zoo and just over $10,000 from the Wildlife Society, closer to 11,000 actually from the Wildlife Society, which makes both of those contributions eligible for our recently adopted 30% matching opportunity. And so those organizations are currently selecting which projects they want their donation to go to. And so waiting, so we don't go to the next ones on the list in case they want to choose one further down the list. So there's not yet an update on new projects approved, but there should be by May.
And so Davia, the Verde project was the last one funded?
The Verde project is the last one that we have an agreement with. And hold on, rather than opening my file, I accidentally hit the close button on it. Let me pull it back up. So the projects that we are currently working on contracting based on funds available as of our last meeting are engaging outdoor recreationists in the conservation of Oregon's native freshwater turtles, Key for Life, Adventure Wednesdays, Outdoor Leaders Youth Camps, and the Upper Klamath Basin Juvenile Chinook Salmon. And let me try sharing my screen now that I'm already unmuted. Probably will work. And so this is our full list of projects. Harney and Club Aves were approved based on fundraising in January. And then these next 5 that are highlighted were approved based on funds raised through March 5th, which was our last meeting. And so the next projects, depending on those restricted gifts and where they choose to go them, would go to Wallowa Resources and the Blue Mountain Sports Partner.
And Davia, you and I should chat about the Klamath one, because I think we might have some opportunities there
Okay.
to raise funds separately for that. But, well, that's good. So we're moving down the list.
Can you scroll up so we can see what's left on the list?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know when you guys are ready for the next page.
Do you have any indication what the Oregon Zoo or the Wildlife Society is thinking about at this point?
I do. They both are looking at full proposals, and just off the top of my head, they are interested in the native pond turtle projects, Club Aves, and the beaver survey with the Wetlands Conservancy. And so if they choose those, since we've already started moving on the paperwork for those, that would just let us go on to the next one on the list with our general funds.
Great.
So that's great.
That just helps us move down the list.
Correct.
So Davia, does that mean that have we not dispersed any funds yet? Actually,
For the second round, the projects approved in January, we have a contract in place with almost all of those, where I think we have maybe 2 more we're waiting for signatures, but we have not actually sent any money out the door for those projects.
Okay.
Most of the projects are operating as a reimbursable grant, and so they will do the work and then ask for the funds.
And everyone has been good with that and okay with the timing?
Yes, and we are offering upfront payments for organizations that need the money upfront rather than a reimbursement, but only if you have asked for that.
And at least one of these, the Tide Gate one has removed their proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Have we heard any more from any of the others, or is that the only one?
Here's the bottom of the list. Here is the.
Any reason why they removed their Tigate proposal?
They found another fund source.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
And then Holton Creek is another one that's a little bit unusual in that we've gotten some direct donations for that as well.
Yes, so we're working on an agreement for a restricted gift for the Holton Creek project.
Great. Okay, well, that's a good update. Does anyone have any questions about those existing?
Davia, I'm just curious if the Ski for Life one, how they're thinking about the seasonality of it, because obviously we're getting towards the end of this year's ski season. And what are their thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. I asked them that question as well. I don't have an answer yet. Most of the agreements, we have been running the agreements through January 2nd, 2022, which is when our authority for OCRF agreements runs out. And so my expectation is that they'll probably do the project in November or December 2021. But I have asked them what they think.
I had talked to her about that previously, and this is an ongoing annual thing, and it's not going to change their need at all.
I have
okay, is that maybe Jane?
I just had a question. It seemed like there were a few of the projects that were COVID related, like they were going to do video field trips and things. And I don't remember which those were, but if they're not going to get funding until next year, you know, I'm wondering if we should just take a quick look through those and see if there's some of those that maybe will be a moot point by next year. And also, I just want to say, I enjoy seeing this list so much that when we figure out what the Oregon Zoo and the Wildlife Society are going to do, Davia, will you send this back out to us with like what's left, so we can have a good look at, you know, what the next things in the queue are.
Yes, I can do that, and that's a great point, Jane, about the COVID related ones. Off the top of my head, I'm scrolling from the bottom. The Oregon Coast Aquariums project was a video related COVID resources project. And then just quickly scrolling, I think the other one that was really aiming to sort of adapt COVID projects or adapt to COVID is Exploring Nature in Lents, and that work's already underway. And the Sucor Creek Making Connections project with Caldera and Trout Unlimited, and that one's underway already also.
Okay.
Carl, I had a question. Did you ever make any headway on the Ski for Life, trying to get Bachelor or any other ski resorts interested? No, you were working on that.
Yeah, never closed the deal. You know, a lot of emails went back and forth. But I think this was such a kind of an unusual year for them. They still had to restrict the number of cars that could park up there, and so that unfortunately didn't happen. I should revisit that now that the season's winding down, because we got to get prepared for next year. But yeah, that we were making headway, but it ultimately didn't pan out. Okay, well, good. And I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, but I can't help myself. I just have to bring this up. We're meeting with a lot of folks regarding all the legislative process. And without getting too specific, there's a potential opportunity. Let me emphasize the potential. There may be some federal funds available to Oregon that there's a potential that the remaining projects on our list will be submitted as a group to be funded with that money, meaning like a separate pot of money because those projects are identified and ready to go and could be on the ground. It's going to be a way to bring some money into the state. So it was really smart on the folks who considered that. And I just bring it up just that I was excited about it. Don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that would be a wonderful thing if it did. We'll keep you updated on that one. That segues into the legislative session. There's been all kinds of stuff going on there. Davia, you once again want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, and I put together a slide for this one too to help us visualize the information. So reminder that there were 4 bills introduced this session related to the Conservation and Recreation Fund. And this is the same slide from last time. I just added some notes to it. So House Bill 2600, which was Representative Helms' bill that would allocate a portion of the existing state transient lodging tax to the OCRF, creating a long-term mechanism that would put $1 million per biennium into the OCRF. That one died in committee. It had a hearing, but the committee chair decided not to bring it for a vote. House Bill 2066, kind of zooming to the bottom of the slide, was the Department of Fish and Wildlife's bill, which simply delayed the sunset by 2 years, giving us another 2 years, didn't do anything related to the funding. So the department and the chair of the committee decided that was not a course of action we really want to pursue. We want to remove the sunset and restore the match commitment. So we let that one die in committee as well. So now we have 2 bills that are related to the Conservation Recreation Fund. House Bill 2913 removes the sunset date entirely for the OCRF program and restores the $1 million general fund commitment from the legislature. And the language is such that the department can request funds, those general funds, to match what is raised. And so as soon as the biennium starts, we would be able to say, in the last biennium, we raised $700,000 or however much we get by June, and we would have that match available to us right away. And then we would have the rest of the biennium to use up that $1 million match. We also have House Bill 2171, which does all of the same things. It's the same language, but it has a ton of other related provisions for outdoor recreation in the state. It also formalizes our relationship with the Office of Outdoor Recreation, the way it currently functions. Both of these bills passed out of the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. House Bill 2913 had a unanimous yes vote yesterday afternoon out of the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee, which is great to see that bipartisan support for it. And then both bills are likely to have hearings in the Joint Committee on Ways and Means Natural Resources sub. And it's most likely that will be sometime in late May. So the state revenue forecast will come out the first week of May, and that's when the Ways and Means Committee will really start to make some decisions related to funding. And then I think finally on a process note, since both of these bills are going to a joint committee on Ways and Means as their next step, they don't have to go to a Senate committee. So they came from the House, they'll go to a joint committee. If they pass out of the joint committee, they'll go directly to the floor in both chambers. And so that's just sort of the pathway that they're on at this point.
When you say
Go ahead.
joint committee, do you mean joint committee for natural Ways and Means, Natural Resource Sub, or what's the joint committee?
The joint committee is the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And so essentially the bills refer to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, and then the actual work happens in the subcommittee.
Thanks.
There was a question, Davia, about 3328. You might want to let people know what happened with that one.
Yes, that was where I was about to head.
Okay.
There is one other bill that is now related to OCRF, House Bill 3328. And it was a bill introduced by Representative Brock Smith that creates a new tax, a new income tax that would generate on the order of $160 million per biennium. And the revenue from that tax would go to the Department of Fish and Wildlife for a large variety of purposes. And if you check out House Bill 3328 on the web and you see the testimony, the department's testimony included that we would grant out a large portion of those funds to implement the Oregon Conservation Strategy through the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund. But Representative Helm introduced an amendment to House Bill 3328 that would dedicate $1 million per biennium of those dollars for the OCRF. So that bill had a hearing, I guess it was Tuesday this week, in the House Revenue Committee. And so there was testimony provided to the committee and some discussion. And it was relatively well received, but it is a new tax, which requires a 2/3 vote of both chambers to pass. So it's an exciting opportunity. Encourage people to take a look at it. But a difficult pathway, I guess I'll say.
Thanks, Davia. Any questions about the legislative process and what's going on? Mark Labhart, have you got some comments? I'd like to hear your take on where we're at.
Well, I would say Davia covered it very well. I think 3328, I'm not as rosy about it as maybe Davia is. It's just a difficult path. It's probably got a really tough path because it's a tax, it's a new tax. And so probably the chances of it moving ahead are pretty low, but we'll see. You never know in the legislature. And we've just got to work our folks on Joint Ways and Means. If you know anybody on Joint Ways and Means, and all you got to do is just look it up on the web page to find out who those members are. If you know of any of them, talk to them ahead of time as before it comes to them, so it's totally not a total surprise. I would say that from what I've been watching, there was a little bit of consternation with 2171 from some of the members, and it's related not to OCRF. Almost all, both sides of the aisle like the OCRF, but there were some other issues regarding the outdoor recreation that some people had some trouble with, but it's still passed out and is moving. And then 2913, I think, is the one that's got the biggest potential because it's directly, everything's OCRF and only OCRF. And by having a unanimous vote on the, as Davia said, on ag and natural resources, it sends a pretty clear message that there's some strong support for the program. And so hopefully that carries through to ag and natural resources. And then I think that, what's going to happen here is, in my opinion, we're going to wait for the May revenue forecast and we're going to see what it looks like. And I think it's going to be good. And then with the stimulus funds that have come in recently, there was some fairly large, I don't know what you want to call it, but there was a lot of money's coming to the state of Oregon, both at the state level and the county level and cities. And so it's in the billions of dollars for the state. And so I think the tri-chairs on Ways and Means are going to be fairly happy with that. But Betsy did tell me that everybody's already spent that 3 times over for, give me the money, give me the money. So, it's going to be an interesting discussion, but OCRF is on the radar screen. And so far it's been very positive. We just got what I call relentless engagement. Just keep at it, keep making sure it's in front of people, because there's a lot of these legislatures don't have time to read stuff and their staff doesn't have time to read stuff. So we just need to keep OCRF in front of them and make sure that they have the attention that this bill deserves and this program deserves. So that's my thoughts. Still a lot of work ahead of us. So
Thank you, Mark. Mark has been instrumental and crucial in us being where we are today in the legislature. And I'm very proud of that unanimous vote that we got. That speaks to, I think, the great work that you all have done on this committee. You should all be proud of that. We come across really well. Our story is really solid. And in fact, I think it's solid enough that, just so you know, as we're talking to Ways and Means, the bill has $1 million in it, but really that's not adequate. We've already raised that $1 million. We are knocking on the door of $1 million. With the project we're going to discuss next and other ones that are in the wings, we will have raised that $1 million in the very early part of the next biennium, maybe within the first 3 to 4 months. So that we need to be trying to get them thinking about that and to keep our momentum rolling. And one of the efforts, I think that number needs to be 2 million, and we have some mechanisms to try to make that happen. And so again, if you have any connections, anyone that is in, as Mark said, my experience is they hear about so many different things, each legislator, that it's hard for them to keep track of it. But the more they hear it, the better it is. So take a look at your own legislator or any connections that you have, and please, we just need to keep telling the story. The story is very compelling. So if there's any way you can reach out, please do, because this is a critical time into where we go in the next biennium. We've really done a great job, you guys, and thanks for all your work. It's been great, very gratifying. So any other comments about the legislative process and where we are?
I just had a question. Davia, could you review the sensitivities on how we talk to legislators on which bill? I knew there was some bills we could and some we couldn't, and could you refresh us on that?
Yes, well, conveniently, the 2 bills we have left, this committee and all ODFW have the leeway to support. And so you can support these bills in your capacity as a part of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So that is a safer place, I guess, to be than some of the bills where we had to remain neutral. And I will say that if you are speaking to a legislator, you can do so kind of in 2 capacities. You can do so as a citizen of Oregon, or you can do so as a member of this advisory committee. And So being clear about that when you have those conversations. If you're there to talk about the OCRF, you can do it as part of the advisory committee. If the conversation sort of goes to another bill that's not related to OCRF, you've just got to make sure that you say, you know, in my capacity as a member of the advisory committee, we're neutral on that, or we're not interested in that. But in my capacity as a citizen of Oregon, here's what I think about it. And so just making sure you remember that you are representing the governor since she appointed you to your seat. So making sure you're aware of her position on something you might be asked about. Good idea. And if you don't know, stay neutral.
Great. Well, thank you all. Okay, well, that brings us to the next part of the agenda, which to me, I think is really exciting, an exciting opportunity for us. As you know, our fundraising and our efforts have evolved over time. And I'm going to give a little bit of historical background to this because I think it's important for us to revisit. We all knew that we were doing pretty well just reaching out to Oregonians and through the website and through the Odfw site. And we knew that we had to get some contact with Oregon businesses. And during that process, we were able to get in front of some folks at Keene and also REI. And in ways I'm not exactly sure how it happened, I ended up in a conversation with a gentleman from Keene's philanthropy, you know what I'm trying to say, that department, and Renee Myers of Forest Park Conservancy. They were working on a really exciting project. REI had been partnered with them. They described this project to me and I thought, oh my gosh, that's like perfect for us. And we talked about, well, gosh, Keene, if you donated that money to us, then we will get that match to put out into the space, the same conservation space, and wouldn't that be great? And that's when I started hearing this, well, what about matching the project? What about getting some of that funds back to the project? We at Keene would like that because that helps us tell our story, and we leverage some money. We put our money in, we got more money for this project. And that was the genesis of the whole concept of this match. Well, as you know, that evolved and we've refined it and did a nice job in coming up with a mechanism to deal with it. And those conversations with Forest Park continued, Forest Park Conservancy, and just got better. So what has transpired is Forest Park Conservancy is working on a project with an organization called Love is King. Love is King is run by Chad Brown, who also I know Mark Stern has talked to as part of Soul River, which is another outdoor equity type BIPOC organization. They are working on a project where they want to basically recruit stewards and actually Chris Hager, I'm going to ask him to describe. There's another organization, the Trail Keepers, Oregon Trail Keepers, that Chris has been involved with. The three of those groups have a project to reach out to the BIPOC community to encourage them to be, are they ambassadors, Chris? Is that, there's a term for it in the application, they're ambassadors, they're trail ambassadors. I had
Guardians?
a chance to talk to Renee today, and she clarified a lot of things. So Chris, could you tell us a little bit about the Oregon Trail Keepers as you did this morning?
Yeah, Mauricio, did you have something? I think you chimed in there
No,
for.
I think the term that he was looking for was guardians, but I don't know if this is associated with a larger campaign or this is just for the purpose of the Forest Park Reserve. Sorry, maybe it's nothing particularly pertinent to what you're about to talk, Chris.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, no, so the ambassadors are basically are within the proposal, they've identified on recruiting ambassadors for the program, modeled off of the Trail Keepers of Oregon. For those that aren't aware about TKO or Trail Keepers of Oregon, they're a volunteer-based trail maintenance group that basically focuses on high-use trails within the Portland metro area, and then within a couple hours of Portland. And so they'll basically either get contracted or get flagged by state agencies to say, hey, our crews can't maintain XY trail. It has a little bit of erosion. And so they actually network and have a strong list of volunteers that they'll draw from with maintenance and trail experience to head out, organize a meetup, and go hike about 5 or 8 miles in the morning, bringing pickaxes, Pulaskis, chainsaws if needed to reopen trails or help rebuild some problem areas. I did a lot of work with them a couple years ago on at the Portland Audubon Society and their trail network area. And so that was a lot of fun. But it looks like what this proposal is doing is modeling off of that proposal specifically for Forest Park. So engaging in and working with partner organizations like Carl, remind me, it's Love is King. Yeah, Love is King. And highlighting ambassadors within those organizations to introduce them not only to the outdoors, but into the Forest Park area and how they can be more involved.
Yeah, and the intention is to make this statewide. They're starting in Forest Park. And the other question that Moret brought up this morning, I talked to Renee about, and that is, it seems to be very focused on the recreational piece, but it turns out that's not accurate interpretation. There's a large stewardship role too that they want from these ambassadors, and that is regarding habitat, restoring habitat, protecting habitat. There's more than just the recreational trail piece. And the whole goal is to recruit and engage the BIPOC communities into these efforts and have them as the ambassadors. They have a very well thought out protocol and a curriculum to train both all of the ambassadors in terms of ways to recognize when there's some confrontations occurring and how to diffuse those, how to deal with those kinds of issues. And so it's all directed at removing those barriers that are out there and to get and to help build the constituency for conservation in the broader population. So it really fits a lot of our mandate, our framework, our priorities. The committee this morning unanimously approved to recommend that we move forward with this project. It scored. We also scored it in our previous scoring template, and it got good scores in that template. But the recommendation is to move forward with this. There's some fantastic opportunities with Keene right away and REI to raise significant funds, and the intention is to reach out to other businesses and raise funds to be leveraged through the OCRF. Meyer Memorial Trust is one of the other entities involved, and Davia has spoken with them, and they're extremely enthusiastic about the OCRF. And that's another thing that's going to go very far in our discussions with the legislature when we can mention Meyer Memorial Trust, Keene, REI. And what it also means is we're going to hit that $1 million, I think, early on in the next biennium. And we need that second million. If Oregon wants to leverage private funds, this is the mechanism to do that. So I'm personally quite excited about it. Is there any questions about that project? That's just a brief overview of what they're trying to do. Renee has assured me she can provide us with budget numbers. She has all of that. This is a very well thought out project. And I can provide you with all that information. But at this point, that's a pretty thorough synopsis of it.
And I wanted to offer to the group on Thursday, this coming Thursday, I will be walking the Ancient Old Growth Forest Preserve with Renee and Alejandro Olisola, who is the Conservation Director for Forest Park Conservancy. So the intention, of course, is to learn a little bit more about that partnership and all that, and how you know, exactly how that works. And so happy to also, if there are any particular questions that arise between now or after the conversation with Carl, I'm happy to bring that to them next Thursday.
Oh man, I'm so happy to hear that. Go ahead, Jane.
I just want to say that not only does this sound like a great project, but it's also a perfect template to show other businesses and nonprofits how this whole system can work and get them on board. So that's really going to be a great thing to be able to share. So yay.
Thank you, Jane. Mauricio, that I'm really happy that you're meeting with them, and if you could, I think it'll be really helpful at our next meeting if you're able to sort of report back to us what your thoughts are, and you know, really talk it over with Renee. Renee has just turned out to be this, oh my God, she's been so enthusiastic and so helpful and has opened so many doors for us. And I think that's just starting. So I really appreciate you reaching out to her in person. I think that's really important. So thank you for that.
I was just going to second Jane's comments. I think Carl, you and Davi have done a great job connecting with them, and to be, you know, working with Keene and REI and potentially Meyer. I mean, those are headliner names, and it's just really a sign of good things to come and success. So good job on sorting that out.
Well, it's exciting stuff. We have to keep this ball rolling. I mean, we've got the momentum, and I want all of us to stay engaged with this, because the bigger prize is we've now proven what we can do, and it's not going to be getting $1 million a biennium. We have to, but we need to use that in this next biennium to be thinking about how we're going to do things like Representative Brock Smith's proposal to refund ODFW. We got 2 years to, we are now got our feet on the ground. We can be thinking about how to redo this whole system and really make it work. So we got our work cut out for us, and we need that extra funding just to keep the ball rolling. But again, the prize we're reaching for is much bigger. And so anyway, we set the stage. We're in a good position. So Davia, is there a formal adoption for this project? What we're basically asking is if everyone agrees with this and this becomes an accepted project, we can accept restricted funds for this, and then that unleashes us to go out and raise the funds as we can. Is there anyone who would like to propose this?
I can, Carl.
Great, Chris.
I move that the committee recommends the project Forest Park for All from the Forest Park Conservancy for consideration by the commission.
Second.
Mauricio
Second.
seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor? Thumbs up. Yay, baby. Great. All right. Well, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. We've done another good thing. I'm happy with that. Wonderful. So that actually gets us sort of down to other business. Any other comments or discussions? I mean, I think we can wrap this up. We'll have a public comment
Mark,
thing here.
Yeah, Carl, I was disappointed. I went into a Columbia Sportswear outlet store this week and I bought some stuff. And at the end of it, they said, would you like to make a donation? And I forget where it was, but would you like to make $1 donation to this group? And I thought, well, what about OCRF? So I think we ought to, I just don't know anybody there, but and I don't know if Mark Stern or somebody has connections with Columbia, but they are doing that. And there was 2 people ahead of me, and each of them, besides myself, said, "Sure, we'll make would you like to make $1 donation to this group?" And it was some outdoor thing. But man, if we could get in the door with Columbia and all their outlet stores and everything, and would you like to make a donation to the OCRF? And I'm sitting there going, God, how can we get our foot in the door here? So I hope we can set up something where we can maybe on their next round of, I'm sure they wait a quarter or maybe 6 months. I don't know how long their fundraising is, but was just kind of really disappointed. I'm thinking, God, we can't miss this opportunity. So
I agree. And that was what the attempt with Bachelor was, is that you could when you bought your ticket, you had an opportunity to donate to the OCRF, but that just didn't happen. So there's a lot more stores there's a lot of stores that do that. Again, now that we're talking to REI, that's going to come up. We haven't gotten down to nuts and bolts with them yet. But
It didn't look like she had something to add.
What's that, Davia?
I did. What I was going to say is the person kind of in our fold that has the connections with Columbia Sportswear, I think, is Tim Gressel from the Oregon Wildlife Foundation.
Okay.
Instrumental in this since the beginning. And I know that he has good relations with them. So maybe we could put him up to that.
I will say that, Mark, you are so on to what we've thought since the bill was signed in July 2019. We thought that's what we need to do. And so we met with Columbia's philanthropy folks, Tim Gresseth and I, in late 2019. And they were very focused on the idea that they kind of have their philanthropy set for the next few years. They have a plan for what they're going to be working on. And so that was a year and a half ago, and we've changed a lot and grown a lot. And so I think that's a good reminder that we should maybe revisit that conversation with the Columbia folks if we can. The other avenue we have is REI, where Carl and I have started some conversations where we're hoping to make some progress down that path. But I think that's a great thing for everyone on the committee to think about who they know, who knows anyone that can help us with that.
There is Weimar. I know ODFW has a relationship with Weimar already.
Do we have someone? I know that we've had some conversations with OCF, the Oregon Community Foundation. I don't know how many of you have received their monthly Voices newsletter, but I mean, you take away the logo and it looks like an OCRF message. They're talking about how communities are acting on climate change and conservation, stories of communities to collaborate to create local water solutions. I mean, clearly they are in tune with the kind of things that we're doing. And I'm wondering if either we already have a way in to start a conversation with them, or if we should try to figure out a way to do so, because clearly they have their sights on exactly the kind of substance that we've been working for a while on doing. Even the human stories that they're featuring, it is exactly the kind of thing that we could very easy add on to the bulk of their objectivity there.
So what entity is that, Mauricio?
The Oregon Community Foundation.
Oh, okay, yeah. We have a relationship with them. We're working with them right now on. We're meeting with them next week regarding the Marine Reserve. So yeah,
is that what they're calling the Ocean Conservation Fund?
Oregon Ocean Science Trust and Oregon Conservation. Oregon Ocean Fund, yeah. They actually donated to the Sea Otter Project through us.
Okay, okay.
So you're right, that there is a connection, and we should try to leverage that going forward. Yeah, so it took us a year, but we've got those connections, and so now we just got to keep rolling.
Beautiful.
I was going to ask Mark Labhart if you know Kathy Dagendorfer.
I know she lives, supposedly she lives out here by me somewhere, right?
Right. She's got Pine Meadow Ranch, and she's the daughter of Gert Boyle of Columbia Sportswear. I think she is not directly involved with the management, but she's peripherally involved. And so I just thought if you run into her, she's also got the Roundhouse Foundation in Sisters, which supports art. And she also has supported art and conservation combos for us in the Forest Service in the past. So just anyway, just so you know, she's connected and she's active in the community.
Okay, I do not know her, but I could sure reach out to her. And the other thing I would offer is Tim, Davia, if you're going to meet with Tim and to talk to Columbia and I could help, let me know. So.
All right. Any other business? Okay. Well, do we have any public comments?
We have Mike Toady, Ken McCall, and Leland Brown with us. So if you guys want to make comment, take yourself off mute. Leland said he's willing.
When am I not willing? So couple of things. One is Oregon Zoo, I believe, has a fairly good relationship with Columbia. And I actually, in the middle of this conversation, sent an email to the director of the Oregon Zoo Foundation to see if we could get them to help initiate some of those conversations with them. So hopefully we'll hear something back from that. I think having some more of those kind of diversified touches with an organization like Columbia will be helpful. The second piece is, you know that the Wildlife Society has consistently been concerned about maintaining the focus of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund on conservation. Our interpretation of the foundational legislation, as well as the history around the task force and development of the recommendation for OCRF was around conservation and how to connect recreationists to conservation, not to necessarily focus on recreation projects themselves. So it was heartening to hear you say that, there continues to be a focus on proving this and then moving into that sort of situation. I think a little bit of the concern is that it's not documented particularly well in the frameworks. And so institutional knowledge, as we all know, is critical for these kind of long-term planning. And if we lose some of that with changes in the board positions or committee positions, I'm a little worried that focus also gets lost without having it well documented in kind of the foundational documents around the funding. So that's just one thing that we really wanted to touch base on really quick. I wanted to touch base on really quick. But again, understanding that there is a need to show legislature that this is a supported effort and needs to happen, and seeing kind of this broad support from REI and Keen and other organizations to really bring in kind of big dollar projects is critical for that. So glad to see that happening, and of course, excited to see the funding coming in and the work that y'all are doing, but also want to keep reiterating those points into the future.
Leland, thank you for that. And Jane has her hand up.
So Leland, I just want to say that I too share that concern. And I'm glad you're willing to hold the feet of the committee to the fire on this, since I've been maybe a little bit of a broken record on it, but I'm just worried that we're sort of forcing the more pure science projects and the things that are purely like species conservation to sort of tack on some kind of recreational component or something in order to score high enough on this. And that has concerned me from the beginning. And Leland, please keep everyone's feet to the fire on that.
Well, you know, I won't be able to shut up about it. So. Sorry, Carl.
No, I appreciate both of you bringing that up. And that speaks to something that I actually had intended. I mentioned this yesterday, I wanted to bring up. And Jane, you were part of that conversation. I have those same concerns. Part of this, you know, honestly, we're doing the things that allows us to raise money, and we're looking for the attractive projects, and we've done that, but we don't want to lose sight of what we were formed. And Leland, you've been very good at bringing us back to that and reminding us, and so is Jane. And we have this opportunity right now where we have focused on these large, we have the opportunity to focus on some large projects. And here we have a very good one that's encompasses outdoor equity and recreation and a smaller piece of conservation. It's not the main piece of it. We're also talking with Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts about land acquisition. So there's another type of project that we're doing. We're working with the potentially as a larger donation source is the Marine Reserve Project, which is of course more science-based and focused. But what we have not done is identified a true, I don't want to say a species focused but a habitat focused, a true conservation project that we could do that same model with, where it's like a big pond turtle study or a white-headed woodpecker study. Or I would love for us to round out our portfolio with something like that is more focused on what you are talking about, Leland. And so I would ask Jane and Leland to be thinking about that very thing. Leland, go ahead.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I think one of the things that the initial focus for OCRF was building capacity within ODFW. And I think one of the things missing currently from the framework is that portion of looking for projects specifically that work with, that have ODFW as a component, as part of the priorities of a program, to continue to build that capacity. I think including that into kind of the more official framework would assist in developing some of that ability and, you know, capacity within the agency itself.
Well, it seems time for us to be seeking out something like that. Again, we're coming up with examples of what we can do in the future. And so we are actively seeking the types of projects, just like we have with Forest Park and with the land acquisitions. And we need to find something in the realm that we're discussing now. And that might be in conjunction with ODFW on a priority of theirs, or something that Jane is from, you know, I look to Jane on this to help guide us and help. I want to find that big project. I want to find one that we can focus on like we have these others. Not because that one project is going to be the be all and end all, but it is an example of what we can do in the future on a bigger scale. So I think it's time for us to find one of those projects. And I'd ask all of you to be thinking of it. Mark?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously one of the things we've run into is that for these more conservation specific wildlife related projects, it's harder to find private dollars that are out there that we can use in the way that the Forest Park opportunity is there. But another way to think about it is assuming that the match comes through and we then have, you know, additional funds to go out with. One thing we could think about is in our next RFP, we could craft it differently, and we could have one category where we're looking for a large wildlife project or projects that we're going to offer 50,000 or 100,000 or something that we could, ourselves with those additional dollars we get, put forth a project that sort of matches what you were aiming at. So that might be another way to fund that kind of project as part of our portfolio of projects.
That's a great idea, Mark. That's sort of like what we did with the outdoor equity. We sort of earmarked as like, okay, we need to get we need outreach to outdoor equity. And we earmark some funds for that. We could do the very same thing with those matching funds as they come in.
Or for a larger scaled project might be the difference.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. Thank you. So Mauricio?
No, well, I was pointing to Jen, but I also had something to say. But I think, and also Mike Toady from OCRAC has had his hand up for a while. So I don't know how you.
Yeah, I'm not following that. I don't have the hand up thing. Oh, I see. Mike Toady. Why don't we go with Mike? Mike Toady.
Thanks, Chair Winter. I just appreciate the opportunity here. And for those that don't know me, Mike Toady obviously is my name. I'm Conservation Director with Oregon Hunters Association. And in terms of the public comment thing, I just wanted to echo Leland's comments there. And I think obviously in networking and such, we've talked about some of these things there too. Also really appreciate just briefly, Mark, your approach and thoughts on kind of a bigger project funding thing and kind of maybe changing the scope and looking at those things. Larger scale conservation type projects is something we're very interested in, and OHA has been involved with, as you know. But those are big ticket items there too. And so as you look at chipping away at these things, $10,000 at a time without some other sort of funding partnership is a challenging thing to do, both for conservation organizations and the agency itself. If I could, Chair Weiner, just had a couple other quick thoughts, comments, if there's time.
Sure. Go ahead.
So one, Kelly, I see you're really busy there, but just wanted to introduce myself there too. Don't know if when people see OHA in this day and age, they automatically think Oregon Health Authority for some reason. I don't know why, but if you Google OHA, that's what you're going to find is Oregon Health Authority. But Oregon Hunters Association has been involved with the Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund, and there might be a member or two on the screen here today. On the funding part of it there, again, I would just offer once again that hunters and anglers were some of the initial folks to fund this. And I think one of the reasons for that is it was made very easy, right? You went online, you bought your hunting fishing license, then before you got out of the system, there was an opportunity sitting right there for you to check a box and make an initial contribution. And so I think a lot of folks want to do that. And that concept that Mark Labhart, Commissioner Labhart talked about at Columbia Sportswear, where there's an opportunity. If folks shop at Cabela's, every time you're there, you have an opportunity to round up or something like that, or make a contribution there at the check stand. So if we find ways to make it easy for people, it's easy for them to contribute, even at small amounts every single time around. So I would just offer that. Appreciate it.
Mike, thank you so much. I apologize for being busy. I'm hustling lunch here.
I don't know what's for lunch, but it looks really good. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you for introducing yourself and taking the moment. I appreciate that.
Mike, I would ask you, does Oregon Hunters Association have a relationship with Cabela's or Columbia Sportswear or someone like that you could help us get in the door?
We certainly have one with Cabela's, Chair Winter, as contributors to us. And so if you look at most of the obviously the hunting related type organizations, Nosler, folks like that who make contributions to help us with our fundraising, those are the connections we have. I'm not aware of one specifically with fundraising with Columbia, but I know in another larger project, Oregon Solutions project there, Mr. Boyle's involved in a project out there along Clatsop Plains with some elk issues out there. And I think he owns a golf course that's being impacted out there. So we do have some of those types of fringe relationships, though.
Well, there might be a way that I could foresee that we could approach Cabela's, say jointly, say with OHA and Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund, where maybe we could do a joint fundraising effort with that checkout at the cashier approach.
And I'd have to look into that a little further, Chair Winter. I think basically they have a suite of conservation organizations that they would kind of dole that money out to, if you will. And so it's just if it might be a type of thing where you can add OCRF to that, specifically here, at least in the Oregon outlets. There's 2 of them here in Oregon. And
yeah, well, we'd be
yeah,
great to look into that and see.
Right.
Mark Labhart's idea is a great one. All
I have
right.
some relationships with folks at Danner and La Crosse as well. That might be, it's kind of a different take on it, but maybe, you know, equipment and gear. I'm thinking stuff for people that are hunters and fishers and people in my work also. There might be a connection there I can look into.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great, Kelly. Thank you. You understand what our goal is, and we're trying to leverage our success, and now we have some, we can bring it, put that in front of people, and it's attractive.
So Davia, could you send maybe Kelly, just you sent her all the background information on OCRF and okay.
Yep, I've been looking at your website, and then she's also sent me all the information. So I'm still reading through all of that, and Carl gave me a really good brain dump as well, which was excellent.
A brain dump, God. All right, I'm glad I could do that. Okay, I think we're pretty good.
Carl, I think Leland has one more word.
Leland, okay. Thank you, Mauricio. Leland.
Never help myself. So 2 things. I'd like to welcome Kelly, but I don't know who this needs to be addressed to, maybe the governor's office. But as I don't think we ever saw any information about the potential appointments, the nominees from anyone. And we would have loved a chance to take a look at those. And as you still have someone, I think, a position still waiting to be filled, kind of same thing with that, being able to provide input on potential appointees. And then for Kelly, the other thing is, if you haven't seen the task force report from 2015, I think that would be a really important document for you to review, because it gives you the mass amount of background behind the formation of OCRF, the need for funding, how much funding is actually needed, and all these different points that initiated the formation of both the fund and this committee. So I think that's all I had. You never know, I'll think of something later, but welcome.
And
we had the same level of frustration with the appointment. I mean, I know that there is a very qualified candidate in front of the governor right now for that particular area, the Blue Mountains, that they're not moving on. And I'm not sure if you have influence in the governor's office, it would be really great to fill that spot. And that particular person I know has applied and has the application in and is quite well qualified for it. That's oh my gosh, Davia, what's her name? I'm apologizing. The applicant for the Blue Mountains position, what is her? Do we know that her application is?
All of the names that the governor's office has, Holly Atkinson is one of the ones that you talk to. But I will say the governor's office is interested in any names anyone has for people who might be qualified for the Columbia Plateau Blue Mountain seat.
All right.
We have Ken, Carl.
Okay, Ken McCall.
Thank you, Chair Winter. I also wanted to introduce myself to your new member there too, Kelly. Kelly, I'm Ken McCall. I signed in really late here. I'm with OHA. I'm outgoing vice president and hoping to recycle myself back into the state board in a different position pretty shortly, but have been pretty active in working with and enjoying all the great work that this committee does. I'm totally impressed ever since day one on the accomplishments of what this group has done. And I also noticed that Mike popped his camera on there for a minute. He was probably going to say Holly Atkinson is a candidate. Holly's been pretty great wildlife biologist, a lot of time on the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission and numerous other things. So I'm guessing that's what Mike was going to say. But other than that, keep up the good work, folks. I'm sorry I signed in late today. I was on a phone call with my good friends over in Central Oregon that had to do with the Gilcrest Wildlife Crossing, which we're working on getting that contract out for that fencing. And so hopefully one of these days in the not too distant future, Carl, when you run up and down the highway there, you can see us out maybe pounding some fence posts or fixing some fence. Thanks to, in no small part, to OCRF for funding. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for their comments and for the public that took the time to observe all this. So if nobody has anything else, Davia, is there anything last minute you wanted to mention? Anything we need to
Carl?
Maurice has his hand up.
Yes. And I also want to open, I know Jane also had her hand up way before Mike. I don't know if that's still relevant. So I just wanted to, well, number one, when you tossed the ball to me, Carl, at the beginning of the meeting, I wasn't sure if that was going to be so hello, Kelly. Well, so glad you're here. Mauricio Oladrian, Vice Chair. I wanted to just comment a little bit on what Leland and Jane were talking about, and then Mark, in terms of how there is the risk of skewing things towards recreation and how we really are at the service of the conservation strategy, and how the risks that may be there if there is not a very clearly delineated balance there. And I was thinking about an experience that I had with Pamela Slaughter, who is the ED for People of Color Outdoors, which we were able to fund or in the process of funding for them. I'm working with the Coalition of Land Trusts in a project in which we're trying to create documented experiences for people of color to go and interact with the land and basically build relevance in conservation for these communities that just simply don't have it. And I see there's a great potential for bringing relevance of conservation to untraditional audiences that then we become in which this idea of recreation really turns into a conduit towards conservation, which I think would be another way to sort of optimize our potential on that field. When we created this experience, we went there with her family. She wanted to scout the thing so that we could have a much larger experience for a larger group. And one of my concerns were, well, this place doesn't have any paths, doesn't have any trails. And we were sort of like at the mercy of the management of the land to see what that was going to look like. And turns out that was the highlight of that experience. The fact that it was land without, and she fell in love with a native garden. And she herself said that her goal is to, at one point, purchase land in which she can bring people of color to learn about habitat restoration and how conservation efforts have a direct impact in those communities, even in dense urban areas. So I agree that maybe there is a possibility as the next RFP is developed, that we can have that with have the language be more reflective of our intention. But I also see the potential of turning this into a conduit for even more conservation efforts and bring in an entirely new demographic to care about this and be more involved in participating.
Thank you, Mauricio. You just, you're going to have an interesting conversation with Renee Myers, because when I talked to her this morning, that was the gospel she was speaking, and did it in a much more eloquent way than I can do. And I think you two have a lot of good things to talk about. Jane, did you have anything further? Okay, great. All right, Davia, is that, are we good to go?
We are. I should remind everyone that the next meeting is Friday, May 7th at 10 a.m. And also to let you know, the commission meets in late April. I don't have that date on hand. I think it's maybe the 23rd or so, the 25th, whatever the Friday is that week is when the commission meets. And I don't think we'll be able to have approval of this project on that agenda, just the way timing works. And then the next commission meeting is June. And so we will bring this recommendation for the project with Conservancy to the commission, likely in June. I'll let you know if that changes. But we have talked to Renee, and that timeline works for Forest Park Conservancy as well. So we will see you on May 7th.
Hey, Davia, quick question. What's the deadline for getting on the June agenda for the commission? Just in case other projects start to develop as well, more or less.
Great question. I don't have the answer, and I don't know if Michelle is listening, but she would. Give her a second if she's.
Okay, let's look at some timing. So we're looking at an exhibit on the June. We're looking at, to get onto the June agenda, probably need to have identified May 12th is when materials would start being reviewed for June. So if we can know that first week of May, by May 12th, we could probably push it through and make it happen.
Great.
I think that's a great question, Mark. Okay, well, I'm going to call this with one last comment. I just looked out the window and saw 300 specks really high flying north. So it's already happening. They're going to go tell the sandhills on Sawyer Island it's time to go. All right, y'all. That was great. Great meeting. Thank you all very much.
All right, see y'all.